Oh, okay. I was expecting 5 because I knew. Okay, no problem. Nice to meet you. You didn't send me your bio. I sent a mail. I sent it like to you. So I didn't get it. So I was able to just look at it when it gets when All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Helen Uga. Welcome to the second part of the panel on rethinking parenting and parenting. Okay, once again, I said my name is Helen Uga. This is the second part of the panel on rethinking parenting and parenting in 21st century Africa. In the program, there are 4 presenters. However, we have 5. So the new presenter will present as the last presenter. Should I say unfortunately or for now, the first presenter on the list is not available. So we'll go for the second, who is already online. So Dr. Ziyanda Majombozi is a lecturer in the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology. In Anthropology, Archaeology, and Developmental Studies, Development Studies at the University of Pretoria. Her research interests include reproductive, maternal and child health, childbearing, family, and care. While she has also done research on infant feeding and care practices of working-class Black mothers, care practices of mothers affected by tuberculosis, and research on teaching and learning, our key focus continues to be on motherhood and politics of reproduction. Ziyanda's current research focuses on contemporary ideas about birthing practices and social reproduction among middle-class Black women in Johannesburg. Our presentation is titled, "How do we prepare our children for a world where there is racism? Critical race parenting in contemporary South Africa." Zindaya, thank you very much for being on this panel. I would like to say that you have 12 minutes to present your paper. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Helen. And hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So yes, thank you. I'm really sad that I couldn't be there with everyone. Looks like a really nice space and it would have been nice to be there. And so before I get into the actual paper that I'm presenting today, I do just want to give a little bit of context in terms of what or where it's coming from. So this paper is part of a wider piece of work that I did for my PhD, which really, like you say, focuses on, like you read in the bio, focuses on Black women, Black middle class mothers in South Africa, specifically in Johannesburg. And really part of it is to really just kind of start thinking about, you know, talking differently about Black women, because a lot of the times when we talk about Black mothers, it's often with regards to illness, HIV, diabetes, teenage pregnancy, and so forth. And so a big part of the reason behind this project was to get to know Black women's parenting from a different perspective, get to study with and read with a different demographic of Black women, which is Black middle class, as opposed to often the working class that we usually do research on in South African anthropology, at least. And so that's kind of larger project it's from my PhD. And today I am just basically on the ways in which race permeates mothering of experiences of mothers, and trying to see how we could use critical race theory, critical race parenting in contemporary South Africa, as we start thinking about how do we mother in a post-apartheid South Africa. And so I want to start with an interesting, so it was an ethnographic study, and I opened this paper with an encounter, an experience when one of my participants had invited me and my husband to her house. And there were a couple of other couples there as well from our local church. And this is now in 2017, where bulk of the research was done. And she, so she, she welcomes all of us, and we're sitting, and, there's pizza, there's chicken, we're getting ready to eat. But at the time, the media in South Africa was, buzzing with issues around race, right? Encounters of, racial incidents, the racial incidents that were happening in schools where Black children were being told, their hair is unprofessional, they should cut their dreadlocks, and all these kinds of things that were happening at the time. And also there was the buzzing, Black Lives Matter movement in the United States of America. And so the news were really saturated with stories about about violence against Black people, both in South Africa and in other parts of the world. And so as we're having our dinner, all talking about the times where we encountered racism, and how our response to it was to kind of just like, put your head down and let it go. Just to try and avoid conflict, whether it's at work or in public. We had this conversation. At the end of it, we were all just like, no, man, we cannot continue like this. We cannot teach our children to do this. We can't teach our children to keep their head down or let it go when racism is happening, in the same way that some of our parents have taught us. And that there has got to be a different way of engaging racism, especially in our parenting. And I mean, this is, a thing that we all kind of shared. Even my own mother, during the famous Peace Must Fall and Rhodes Must Fall movements, student movements in South Africa, she often was like, what do these students want to happen? Do they want a war? Do they know what it was like raising children under apartheid? They should just be grateful. So there was always this kind of, narrative of just be grateful. But we wanted, so we were all kind of like, making this unanimous decision that, we want, of course, we're grateful, to freedom fighters in South Africa and how far we've come as a country. But as mothers and as fathers in that room, in that moment, we were like, we want to raise our children who are going to be fearlessly Black, proud of being Black, and who have different avenues to express this pride in their Blackness, whether it's in music, playtime, kinds of churches they go to, the kinds of languages they speak, however it is that they wanted to express their Blackness. And we also at the same time wanted to protect our children, from the racism that we had experienced. So even though we all desired a country that's free of discrimination, we at the same time knew that, well, at the moment we are still in a country that, things can get quite racist, and our children can still encounter racism. And so then we want to start thinking about how can our racism differently from us. And the main thing here for me, first was just I was struck by the ways in which, issues of race, these seemingly big issues of race, permeate very intimate spaces of parenting. And so what did this look like then, for my participants? So at the time, they were increasingly reflecting on, the movements such as, Rhodes Must Fall, Feds Must Fall, Black Lives Matter, and they were wondering how these debates will affect their children. And they were very much like, at first I thought this had nothing to do with me because it's just a bunch of students that are protesting. But actually, this will, impact my children and how I respond to it. And so they started to be like, well, one of the things that we definitely can do and look or point to physical change in how we are parenting children and how we're moving towards allowing our children to be proud of their Blackness. Could look like, affirming that they're beautiful, affirming that their hair is beautiful, and that they're able to do anything that they want to do, that they're capable in ways where the world might not affirm for them. And so one of my participants, for example, constantly talked about how, she's very intentional in how she raises her children. And what that looks like for her is she sits them down often to tell them that, you're Black and you go to schools that have predominantly white children, and you mustn't shrink yourself, or, be apologetic if someone treats you badly, and you must know that you're beautiful. And one of my participants intentionally took her child to, multiracial kind of spaces because she wanted her to really be familiar with whiteness, and never find herself in a place where she's intimidated by it. And what that also looked like for some of my participants is that when they found that the creches or the schools that they'd taken their children to were, either racist blatantly, or were not considerate of other cultures in how they were teaching them, then she would just simply take a child out of that school, and she just constantly moved her child from one creche to another, with the, lamenting that they teach them white people things. The songs they sing, the nursery rhymes they do, not only are they in English, but they're also not set in an African context. And so my child is constantly confronted with a world that's different from them the whole day. And the teachers are not really interested in changing this and diversifying the curriculum. And so I don't want him to grow up or to be in a school where the whole day he's not seeing Black people things, he's not seeing Black excellence in what he is learning. And that for her was something that's really important. And she kept, remarking that our children, that being Black children, they need to be in a world where they can locate themselves in it and know that it's a world that's created for them too, and shouldn't be in a position where whenever they read anything, they automatically assume that it's talking about white people, but they have to intentionally, make sure that their children are feeling represented and relate with things that they see. And so what then they did is, of course, a lot in South Africa at the very least, in terms of children's literature and the videos that we see on YouTube Kids, a lot of them won't be in the other official languages. We have many in the country, but a lot of them are in English. The books are in English. In your local retail stores, the books that are on display will be the English books, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll find some the next books at the back of the store, or if you have to do this intentional search on Instagram, which is what then my participants started really actively engaging, pursuing authors of children's books that were African, that were written in different books that were written in different languages. They're intentional about finding Black dolls, and all of these different ways in which, at the very least, in terms of representation, they felt that their children could be seen and could see themselves. And what is important also to me in this research is to show that these big debates of decolonization and what it looks like are not just for us academics or things that policymakers are doing in universities, but they in fact do permeate very intimate lives of people around us and our families. And for my participants, at least at the time, which I think is still an issue even now, people are still debating what decolonization is or how to address racism. Even though they didn't quite know what decolonization is, when they saw these students protesting on the news and on social media and this call for decolonization, they were like, we want to be part of that, you know. And this is you know, the kind of work that they're doing. It resonates with work that we've seen quite a lot in Black feminist studies, in American women and gender studies, of Black motherhood, and this kind of racial consciousness, and trying to cultivate a positive Black identity. The children, I think, is described by, you know, Colin's work, where she calls it mother work, and that it's beyond just kind of ensuring the physical survival of your child, something that actually my middle class didn't quite have to worry about. But it's also really just about raising prosperous children, Black children, in a context of racial injustice, and therefore parenting for Black women then is not just a maternal practice, but also can be quite a very political and cultural task that women take on. And what I then suggest is that my participants were already engaging in this kind of mother work, particularly in terms of their affirming their children and affirming their children's Blackness. But I suggest that, you know, the critical race parenting, which is a relatively new idea from Dupont and Mathis, I think it takes it a step further from what we already have from mother work, which is kind of this racial about how you talk to your child about race and how you prepare them for, you know, racial incidents. But it also talks about how you need to model it, you know, for your child. So it's about really breaking it down for your child, talking about oppression to your child, talking about institutional racism that is embedded in the lived experience of Black people. And it's also about, you know, constantly acknowledging and addressing racial injustice. And what this means then is that, you know, if you see a racist incident happening, you don't bury your head down, but you actually either confront it in the moment, and so that your child can see you modeling this kind of, you know, resistance to racism. And I think, therefore, then critical race parenting offers a possible solution to a question that was at the heart of my research, of my participants' hearts, which was constantly this: how are we going to do this? How are we going to prepare our children for a world where there's so much racism, you know? Not only do you not keep your head down, but you actually, it means you confronting racism for your children to see you do it. It means using your own stories to kind of to give your children narratives and a language to talk about race and racism. I'm not timing myself, and I'm a bit worried about how I'm doing for time. Helen?
I
can't hear anything.
You can talk. Okay, so I said you've actually exhausted your time, but you can still.
Okay, that's what I was worried about. Okay. I think, you know, I mean, I don't want to overexhaust my time. So what I'm going to do is to kind of just leave it at that for now and just wait for the question and answer session to delve more into the ways in which my participants dealt with issues of race and their mothering. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Sindaya. We really did enjoy your presentation. Now we'll call on the next presenters to present their article titled Infant Raising Among the Yoruba of Southwestern Nigeria. And the presenters are Farouk Idowu Bugi and Awa Oluwaseun Oluwatoyin. You have the floor for 12 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olawa Howell, a student from the History and International Studies Department in the Lagos State University. Okay. So I'm actually going to be presenting on the topic infant raising among the Yoruba Southwestern Nigeria. So the Yoruba, one of the largest ethnic groups in Nigeria and West Africa as a whole, have a deep-rooted cultural heritage encompassing rich history, vibrant artistic expression, and complex cultural beliefs. It not only holds immense importance for the Yoruba people alone, but also influenced other ethnic groups and shaped Afro-Caribbean religious and cultural beliefs. The Yoruba culture serves as a means of preserving heritage, promote community cohesion, and provide an identity for the Yoruba people and the broader West Africa region as a whole. Within this cultural tapestry, infant raising holds a special place. Infancy is a critical stage in human development, and the Yoruba people recognize its importance by implementing cultural practices that promote the well-being and growth of their infants. Unarguably, whenever we're discussing about infant raising, we must look at the aspect of motherhood and maternity. In the Yoruba view motherhood as a divine gift and also an integral part of a woman's identity. It extends beyond biological ties that encompass nurturing and caregiving for the community as a whole. There is a popular proverb among the Yoruba that describes motherhood as precious. We have Iyaniwura Babani Dingi. Mother is gold, father is mirror. The mother is seen as a nurturer, the caretaker, and also a teacher for our children. In the Yoruba, they refer the children as okun, which means bead. This is a type of traditional bead that is mostly worn by the kings, obas, and also ijoye, chiefs, that are worn by this particular. So it's like a symbol of royalty. So using the symbol of royalty to describe a child shows that he or she confers on his or her mother the authority, the power to like proffer authority in his or her husband's house. So if it's more like a tragedy for a mother not to actually give birth. So there's this kind of, it was actually reflected in a song where we have Omolokun, Omonide. And it's bimo, a child is a coral bead and a silver. Whosoever comes to the world without giving birth is more like a life of vanity. So I'll be going further by explaining some traditions, some customs, whereby the pregnant women have to like go through, have to like maintain whenever they are pregnant. Now, I'll be talking about firstly, there's this thing we call modesty in dressing. Yeah. So being a pregnant man, there's a particular way they have to dress whenever they are pregnant. So because they believe if they dress in a kind of nonchalant attitude, nonchalant way, it's actually going to like call bad spirits, evil spirits onto the children. So apart from the modesty, we also have the dietary restrictions. There's some particular foods that doing when they're pregnant, they can't actually eat. So for example, they can't eat some things like the alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine, and so on and so forth. So after giving birth, also, there are some particular rites and ceremonies that are actually performed after the birth of a child. We have this, the first one, we have the Isele ceremony. This is where we have like give a name, where the child is given a name on, and where you like be able to connect with the family and other members of the family. We also have the Omugo and the Omoluabi ceremony. This is where the maternal relatives come over to come and help the mother in assisting in everything with regards to the caring and nurturing of the child. And also they give our ideas on motherhood. And apart from that, also, we also have the Osheifa. This is where they like go further to go and look about the child future, like going to go and look at about the destiny of the child, something like that. Then we also have Oro Ishaju Awon, like Oro Ishaju Awon. This is a case whereby it is a kind of circumcision for the boys, majorly for the child, like the male children. So going further into the traditional infant raising practices, there are some practices that are actually done in the Yoruba that is more than how they raise the infants. So I'm going to start with attachment and bonding. It is one of the key aspects of infant raising among the Yoruba people, because between the caregiver and the infant, the Yoruba mother prioritizes physical closeness and engage in practices such as co-sibling, baby wearing, which promotes a strong sense of security and attachment. We also have breastfeeding and nutrition. Breastfeeding is highly valued among the Yoruba people. It plays a vital role in infant nutrition and development. The breast milk is considered the ideal source of nutrition for infants, providing essential nutrients and immune protection. The Yoruba mothers are actually encouraged to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months, then continue breastfeeding alongside with supplementary foods up to 2 years or beyond. There are also some other traditional practices that Yoruba incorporates in support for the infant care. We have something we call Ogun Oriki. This is a massage technique used by the Yoruba people to stimulate the baby sense, promote muscle development, and improve circulation. Also, we have Iyerosun. They call it Iyerosun. It's like more like a red powder made from the tree bark, which is believed to have a protective and spiritual qualities. It is used to mark the children's body and ward off evil spirits. So this traditional practice not only have cultural significance, but they also provide sensory stimulation and contribute to the overall development of Yoruba infants. So going further, we have the Yoruba people. They have a strong sense of community, and they recognize the importance of collective support when it comes to infant raising. The extended family members, neighbors, community elders all play a role in providing assistance, advice, and guidance to new parents. This communal support system not only lightens the burden of child rearing, but also foster a sense of belonging and connectedness when benefiting both the parents and the infants. These traditional infant raising practices among the Yoruba people reflect a deep-rooted cultural heritage that emphasizes the importance of nurturing and bonding with infants. So the Yoruba mothers are encouraged to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months, like I said earlier on, co-sleep with their babies, and use traditional remedies to care for common ailments. Safe sleep practices are also emphasized to promote healthy development. The Yoruba naming ceremonies reflect the importance of passing down cultural traditions from generation to generation. But unfortunately, these traditional practices of infant raising have undergone changes in response to modernity. The Yoruba society have experienced significant transformation over time, influenced by urbanization, globalization, and increased exposure to Western culture and ideas. While there are still remnants of traditional practices, modern influences have brought about modification in how infants are raised among the Yoruba people. You know, traditionally, I said earlier on that the Yoruba people have a communal aspect when it comes to their infant raising. That is, the extended family and the community play crucial roles in care and the upbringing of children. Infants were regarded as belonging not only to their parents, but also to the larger kinship group. However, with modernity and urbanization, there have been a gradual shift towards a more nuclear family structure among the Yoruba people. The influence of Western individualism and the adoption of Western family models have contributed to this change. Nuclear family consisting of parents and their children have become more prevalent, and the responsibilities of child rearing have increasingly fallen on the parents themselves, even as a matter of fact, on the mother themselves alone. In urban areas, where the pace of life is faster and families may be more isolated from extended family, parents often rely on formal childcare options such as going for a daycare centers or probably hiring a nannies. So this is a departure from the traditional reliance on extended family network for childcare. Furthermore, education has become a significant focus for Yoruba parents in the modern era now. So with increased access to formal schooling and awareness of the benefits of education, parents are increasingly invested in their children's academic success. They may prioritize enrolling their children in schools, providing them with educational resources and ensuring their academic progress. However, it is important to note that while modern influences have brought about changes in infant raising practices among the Yoruba people, traditional values and customs still hold significant importance. Many Yoruba parents still strive to maintain a balance between modernity and tradition, incorporating elements from both worlds. Traditional practices such as naming ceremonies, cultural festival, and passing down of Yoruba language and values to children are still valued and celebrated. So in conclusion, the process of modernization have impacted infant raising practices among the Yoruba people. The shifts towards nuclear families, the reliance on formal children care option, and an increased emphasis on education are some of the changes observed. Nevertheless, traditional values and practices continues to have relevance, and many pro-Yoruba parents seek to incorporate them into their children upbringing alongside modern influences. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. As someone that is not really familiar with Yoruba infant food and childcare practices, I must say that you've lectured me or taught me well enough today. I don't know if the next presenter is available. I can't find her anywhere. She online. Okay, so that means Angela Nwako is not around. But she sent me. Okay. Then I guess we'll have the last presenter, so to speak. So the last presenter. Thank you. So the last presenter is Idao Amen. I don't want to murder you. I won't pronounce it in full. So Idao Amen has a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and Literature from the University of Benin, Advanced Diploma in Early Childhood Education from the University of Lagos, Master of Arts degree in English Language from the University of Lagos, Master of Arts degree in African and Diaspora Studies from the University of Lagos. She's a recipient of several certifications such as Content Marketing, University of California, Davis Equip, John C. Maxwell Leadership Scheme, among others. She's presenting on rethinking cultural diversity, language, culture, and person identity in the Benin division of Southern Nigeria. You have the floor, Amen.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. So there's a play with words on the title, as we see. Let us play, almost assuming, let us pray. Right, my name is Amina Wonidau, and I'll be speaking on the paper titled, Let Us Play, the effect of social interactions and social scripts on 21st century parenting in Nigeria. Next slide, please. In Benin, there's an adage, a proverb that says, and that proverb, it or itan in Edo language, responds to the proverbial adage, it takes a village to raise a child. In pre-colonial Nigeria, parenting was all-inclusive, otherwise known as cooperative parenting. A child's biological parents, siblings, and other members of the community, for example, were actively involved in the act and art of parenting through oral traditions such as folk tales, folklores, proverbs, myths, and so on. Positive cognitive, conceptual, developmental, educational outcomes, as well as societal checks and balances were formed. Family relationships were also central. There were evidently strong parent-child attachment, which led to consistent and responsive parenting, as against passive parenting and consequent disruptions we observe in recent times. Through the ages of colonization, local flavor and checks have considerably dwindled, if not extinct, in some Nigerian communities. Unarguably, so therefore, the modern style of parenting, that is the new reality that presents Nigerian parents, presents fewer opportunities for oral traditions and outdoor involvement in play, therefore exposing the 21st century child to learning by observing the adopted Western culture and through social interactions of the environment around him. Next slide, please. This paper, therefore, examines the effects of social interactions in parenting and its implication for the 21st century child. It also examines play as a way of renegotiating cultural identity, inclusion, and social scripts. Next slide, please. In simple terms, play is defined as voluntary engagement in enjoyable activities. According to Vygotsky, in Bert's 2009, imaginative play is a unique, broadly influential zone of proximal development in which children advance themselves. Now, White et al. Also report that in his reports, among Murray in New Zealand, play is seen as a tool to transmit culture and language. And the purpose of play is to develop strong cultural identity. This was evident in the way the environment was set up, in which cultural cues are present. May we go to the next slide, please? Also, Unswanlele, white play, this is the focus. Unswanlele in Children and Childhood and Colonial Nigerian Histories, edited by Said Aderinto, opines that Nigerian children could be explored as modern subjects by way of inducing change, rather than being victims of change. And this led me to descriptive observation. And this descriptive observation presents detailed account of a particular situation. I followed closely, yet tactically, all right, so to not disrupt or interfere in the performance. And this performance took 28 minutes in Ota in Ogun State, right? And then we have details of the child as displayed on the screen. Brief description of this child. For the sake of yeah, I would just like to introduce the child as D. D is a high priority child who loves to play. He's 0.726 meters in height and he's in preschool. He had just finished lunch. He invites his older brother to play. They run to their bedroom. D hurriedly brings out a toy box and empties its content on the floor. Searching frantically, he heaves a sigh of relief as he picks a toy truck off the floor. Going on all fours, he wheels it back and forth, making the sound boom, ping, boom. Next, he says, Ojuoye, 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 as a bus conductor would, all right, in a local car parks, right? And then he begins to say, I not get change, Ojuoye, 15 naira, you know, he screams. And next he says, I'm a Spider-Man. He hops on the sofa, landing with a thud. Then he exclaims, Super Gecko muscle, and hops again on the floor, and hops back to his room. He picks a notebook from the table and says, if you hear your name, say present. Rockyba, Rockyba, answer your name. Rockyba is not in school. Right. He picks a teddy bear lying on the floor beside his door, feeds his neck with his right hand and exclaims, oh, my baby is cold. He grabs the blanket on his bed, spreads it on the floor, and places the teddy softly on it. He dashes out and returns with an earpiece. Patting his chest with his right hand, he yells, I'm a doctor. He picks a shoelace, ties it around the teddy's right arm, then plugs the earpiece into his ears and places the other end on the teddy's arm. He looks, hangs the earpiece around his neck and says, son, which is the teddy bear now, is cold. Let me go and get methylatum. He heads for his bathroom and returns with a cup of methylator and dusting powder. He applies both on the teddy bear and says, sorry, okay? He lays beside the teddy, singing softly, twinkle, twinkle, little sky, how I wonder what you eye. His eyes drift to another object lying on the floor. He picks it with great excitement, climbs on the dining chair, then on the dining table. He picks up the table napkin, spreads it on the dining table, and begins to iron in Printemps play. He calls his brother to take his turn ironing and warns him, don't burn it, be careful, you see. After ironing 2 items, D says, it's okay, let's go to our room. Next slide, please. Finding, D demonstrates the preoccupational stage of play. In this stage, his thoughts are preconceptual, that is, his thinking is dominated by perception. In learning to recognize, label, manage, and communicate their emotions, to perceive and attempt to understand emotions of others through play, it is observed that children can develop skills that connect them with family, with peers, with teachers, and the community as seen by the story. And thus, through free play, children can learn about cultural identity and inclusion. More so, the environmental mood can inhibit or encourage play, and the capacity of children to respond creatively within their interactions can be constrained by the psychological environment of such children. Next slide, please. In fostering inclusion, children need time to repeat, practice, and rehearse. And daily routines and timetables should be flexible enough to accommodate these processes. And although free play is child-led by definition, we recommend that parents have a crucial role in providing suitable environments and in facilitating children's experiences. Cooperation, responsive interactions, and mind-related comments ensure that children become securely attached. Adults who are insensitive and inconsistent can cause psychological damage trauma, negative self-esteem. In the story, I had to be like monitor from afar. Otherwise, there would have been a disruption that would have not be pleasant and not in the story, right? Children can also negotiate and bridge cultural spaces through play. Furthermore, parents can create a psychologically and physically suitable context through engagements in play and telling the African story or narratives through folkloric expressions. In Edo, for example, if a child begins such play, you can initiate conversations like Toyo, Yayabo. Those are folkloric expressions that kind of add local color, cooperation, and responsive interactions to such play. Next, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Idao, for such for such exciting and interesting presentation. I think at this point, I would like to say that the floor is open for questions, suggestions, and comments. But can you check if any of the other participants have? Yeah. I just want. Okay. Pardon? Okay. Question.
Yeah. How many? As many as possible.
Yeah. Yes, as many as possible.
Maybe we give numbers.
Okay.
Can everyone who has a question, please raise your hand. So we're going to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and 6, 7. Thank you.
Zayanda? Did I get it right? Zayanda? I got it right. I identify with your.
Yes,
I got it right.
Yanda.
Yanda, okay. I
Yes.
identify with your presentation because for me, bottom line is oppression. Racism, oppression, and I can parallel with it with maybe feminism in some area around here, and maybe masculinity, because there are ways each of those groups get oppressed. And seriously, I appreciate your identifying that those children need role models. A particular thing, I have been a teacher for the past, for over 20 years now, and I noticed that a good thing to do is identify the personality of a child and know how to help the child to bring out the best in him or her. I identify with your deciding not to put your head down. I don't think putting the head down is the solution. I think it is confronting it headlong. That is the solution. I hope to connect with you via your email so that we can have more discussion. But I think you're doing a very good thing, and I think you should be expanded because those children need to be strengthened psychologically. They need to stand tall because they carry values that need to be improved so that they can be valuable people to the society and respected as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Oh, you are.
I would like to commend the presenters. You've done a great job. My question is to the second presenter, Farouk Boge, about infant raising among Yoruba Western Nigeria. I just want to add that you may want to include the oral rendition of you talk about the method, the ways in which the Yorubas in Southwestern Nigeria raise their infants. You talk about breastfeeding. You talk about communal taking care of the children and all that. In all this, there are local sayings that back it up as well. There are sayings like Omu Iyadu, trying to encourage women to breastfeed, and then trying to portray the positiveness of breastfeeding. There are words like "ẹnìkan ló ń bímọ, ìgbà ẹni ló ń tọ́." So you can incorporate this oral rendition, at least to enrich your study as well. So Zendaya, I can relate with your study because I'm working with parents raising children with albinism. And they seem to have similar challenges with children in the context of racism. In this time, I'll put mine in a colorism now in Africa, you know, where we are, the majority are Black, and these children are distinct, they are unique. So they face similar challenges with what we are saying. My question is, you talk about modeling for these children, that the parents, the mothers do model. In what context, in which way do they model for the children? Do you get my question?
No.
The sound is lost.
She didn't get it. She didn't get it. Exactly
I
how
heard
do
the
they
question, yes.
Oh, okay. You got my question about, hello?
The network is says it.
The network.
I think it's the network. She has frozen.
Yes.
Breaking.
Network
Okay.
Africa.
She's
Yes,
back.
I can hear. I just thought the second presenter was first going to address her question, or should I go?
Okay, she had it then. She had it. Who is next?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want us to go ahead?
Tell us to go ahead.
All right, so you can go ahead and answer the question.
Me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. So what I'm suggesting is, so the mothers in my study haven't, this is the part that they realized that they had not been doing, that they want to do. Because so far, instead of, so for example, if you're in a mall and they see a racial profiling situation happen, more often than not, they'll kind of just like, walk away. And yet at home, they're trying to teach the children to be confident and telling them you're Black and you must be proud and you must confront racism, blah, blah, blah. So then what I'm suggesting is that the step further that needs to be taken is that part of actually confronting racism by the mothers themselves, so that they can model it for their children. Instead of one thing, teaching them this is what Black pride means, but when the moments come, the children don't see the mothers confronting racism in those moments.
Okay, thank you very much to the presenters. My question is to let us play. I find your work very interesting, very innovative, especially in regards to your methodology. And that is why I have a question or a comment, if I don't know how you interpret it. It's to what's your method, how you got to decide on your participants. I understand that it's a descriptive observation. I understand that part, but how do you decide on the 2 children you used? And maybe I'm less concerned about the location, but maybe how did you decide on the children you used? Because this is science. What we do is science, and that also means that it you can repeat it, and you should be able to get similar outcome. So if I pick 2 children in Akoka, for example, and follow your step, will I get the same finding that you have gotten? So as much as I find your method very innovative and very interesting, I'm interested to know your method. How did you decide on where you got the participants and why? Thank you very much, and well done.
This time it will take all the questions. So once the mic comes back, you answer. Please, who is to ask?
Number 4.
Okay, sir.
I'm number 4. Okay, Chair, thank you very much. My own is an observation and a question. Observation to, I think, to presenter, the second presenter, that is Hawao. It's my observation is on the topic. Infant raising among Yoruba of southwestern Nigeria. Well, my observation is that the topic is so porous in the sense that when you say Yoruba in southwestern Nigeria, what are you really trying to say? Because as far as I can see, the topic is like wider, yes, and maybe I don't know. In history, I know we consider Yoruba as a nation, not an ethnic group. So if that is the case, it should be considered Yoruba as an amalgam of several groups. Maybe you may agree with me, there are different sections, or I would say different groups. Ijebu, Ejaye, Egba, Egbado, Ife, etc., etc. So I don't know. Are you lumping them all together and giving them one single this method or a kind of medium of raising an infant? That is why I'm just interrogating your topic. So maybe you can explain better. And secondly, for the third presenter, I'm not comfortable also with your broader generalization of parenting. You say in Nigeria, and I think parenting is something that has to do with culture. Maybe you can also agree with me that cultures determine how parents raise up their children. So if you say in Nigeria, I don't know, are you giving it as a model to whole Nigerian people or Nigerian groups or a specific part of Nigeria? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, who's next? Number 5. It's 5. Okay, 5 here. All right.
Thank you very much, the presenters, the chair, and fellow participants. I don't know where I'm directing my question to, but the people will know how to address it. Thank you very much. The number one thing I want to mention here is on the effect of a communal effort in bringing up a child at the nature. Then, in recent times, we have discovered that when, let me use school setting, when a teacher disciplines a child, you see them running back home, telling their parents, and the parents, because of the money or whatever they have, coming back to the school to come and bully the teacher. Sometimes some proprietors prefer to maintain the child than maintaining the teacher. Does it mean that we should hands off taking care of people's children or contributing to their upbringing, or we should still continue in that plan? Then secondly, to the first presenter, I want to talk about parenting. Now, there are issues in life. Sometimes somebody can get married and you don't have a child on time. Sometimes you may have, and sometimes people adopt. I see the word, the stigmatization, this kind of, when you hit the child, maybe an adopted child, they say, you wouldn't have done like that. Or sometimes the child grows, they'll be the one to come and inform the child, that is not your mother, that's not your father, or something. And that psychology begins to play. Does it mean that adopting to a child is not a problem or what? I don't know if you understand the question. Yeah, this, yes. And the other one is, no, not for her. Ajia, that's the second one. Then the commoner for my name. I'm there. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next. Oh, there's one person, I think, but we can take yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the presenters. Then my question actually is to Amena or Idao. You made mention of parents making sure that they provide a good environment for their kids. And so I want to ask, in what aspect? Is it an intellectual aspect? And then what do you mean by a better environment that would help them
sometimes children may grow with grandparents or with other family members in the compound. And I don't know, children pick a whole lot of, what is it called? They pick a whole lot of habits. So how does this affect children positively or negatively when they are living in an environment where family members are rather many? Thank you.
Oh, we took more. Okay, but that's all right. That's all right. Chair, is it fine if we take one more? Okay, so let's finish this. All right. Thank you. So, last question.
Yeah, I want to commend the presenters for the wonderful. I said I want to commend the presenters for the wonderful presentations, and my comments or observation goes to the second presenter, and that was Awa Olawoyi. So on infant raising among the Yoruba. So I realized in the course of your discussion, your presentation, you were interrogating the factors that are responsible for the changes that has, occurred in the course of raising child among the Yoruba. And you mentioned, among others, education and globalization, among others. So my question is, what impacts, I don't know if your paper is examining the impact of these factors on the infant raising among the Yoruba, and do you also are you examining which one is better, which way to go, which one do we adopt? Should we continue with the traditional method, or we can adopt, we should make sure that the Western method, holds way?
Thank you. Chair, you can decide who answers.
Okay, thank you so very much for your observation, remark, and question. I appreciate. Okay, how did you decide on your methodology? I would say that possibly my experience, right, learning early childhood education influenced and aroused my interest in early childhood children between the ages of 0 to 6, right? And would you have same results with other children? I would say it's open-ended, right? This was a result from my observations. For example, if you want to look at 10 or children be above ages 8, right? You may have to look at the impact of social media, influence of social media, of television and others. They may not necessarily be involved in the kind of play as observed in my description. Thank you. And for decolonizing Africa, talking about my topic having in Nigeria, I think that in decolonizing, right, we're looking at decolonizing Africa, and Africa as a whole. I had to bring it home to Nigeria. We could actually further bring it, narrow the description, right, to possibly a section or sector of Nigeria or African children. No, I can't say African children now. Nigerian children, right? But then I will take that as an observation, not necessarily a question. So I would limit scope for further references and inferences to a particular section in Nigeria. So thank you very much, sir. And okay, to you, please, a child where school owners will prefer keeping their children than allowing for teachers to discipline them. I think that it's maybe this can be addressed on case-by-case basis, not necessarily open. There are some schools that such may not be implemented. However, in the real African society, I started with an adage in my place, even as a parent, you would not, some parents would not want their children to be disciplined by others. So that word, that means it's pretense. Help me discipline my child. It's pretentious. What is on my mind is, please do not kill my child. Just let my child be for me. Exactly. So that's the real situation, right? So not necessarily. So, and I feel like if we look at what's happening in our environment, the school owners are also trying to, create a safe environment for the children. time will permit us to look at a three-dimensional model where encouraging play and social reactions, interactions would have to do with the societal influence at school and home. So it's a kind of three-dimensional stuff that involves play. So that's all I can say to respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your observations and questions. So the first person, actually, I really appreciate your observation. Mike's actually something I'm actually going to input it inside my research. So going to the second question, we were talking about this Yoruba in southwestern Nigeria. Okay, my research is actually based on those people, like the Ijabus, those people, the Yorubas, in that particular area. Not like I said, I'm trying to like impute a particular way for them to go through how to raise their infant. It's more like this is what they've been doing. This is what we do. This is how it should be. So although we can say some particular set of the Yorubas might actually have a specific, but this particular one that I mentioned are actually the ones that we know that are practiced. All right. So to adopting a child, yeah, adopting a child means you've actually tried to take a responsibility on the child. You've agreed to the fact that this person I'm trying to adopt is mine already. A minimal or more. So that doesn't mean I'm not. It's not more like a stigmatizing. You're not giving the best, and you're adopting a child. You own the child already. So it's more like you already have this kind of parental responsibility on the child. So I hope you understand the math. Now, I hope I'm able to answer the question. Yeah, thank you very much. So to the last question, you're talking about, yeah, I think I would actually have to impute that in my research, although there are already some things on it already, which I actually did able to mention in the presentation. So I'm actually going to input that. So thank you very much.
She says, I have a question for I don't know how to I'm interested in her remarks about breastfeeding and Yoruba women being encouraged to exclusively breastfeed for the first 6 months. Who is encouraging them to do this? Is this part of infant feeding practices that have always existed for Yoruba mothers, or is it connected to the political recommendations and infant feeding policies which say children must be exclusively breastfed for 6 months?
Okay. All right. With regards to your question, there was a particular doctor who actually made a statement that the best way to actually raise our infants, or the best way to help our infants grow mentally, exclusively, like the muscle development and everything, is breastfeeding. You know, the person who actually gave me an observation said, that is the breast of a mother is actually more preferable than any other thing. So mixing of this milk and all this stuff is actually not the best option for the kids. So breastfeeding them for that, exclusively for the first 6 months, without any other contemporary or other supplements, is actually the best for them. And again, according to the WHO, the best way to actually make the children grow psychologically and everything is actually the breastfeeding. The milk of the mother is more preferable than any other milk. All right, thank you very much. I hope you get that.
I don't think you know. Can I you know address the question?
Okay. Okay.
The first question about breastfeeding, is it from your
okay, what, like, are you trying to say, is he trying to say that the question was, I don't really get it.
Can I ask you lots of questions? So I think the clarification is because you were speaking about breastfeeding.
Yes.
You mentioned 6 months.
That's
so for people outside the culture, what we want to understand is this medical or is this cultural?
Yeah, it's more like cultural and at the same time medical. Medicine, exactly.
Medical exercise. It's been there, silent.
So more questions are coming up.
Yes.
Someone raised her hand earlier. Okay, yes, so we can take it. All right. So do we do that person and then other? So please.
Oh,
Okay, finance has something to say. You can ask your question, please.
Oh, yes. So no, I was just saying. So my question was really because the presentation has been talking about the Yoruba cultural ways of care. So the reason I was asking that question was because in South Africa we have the same thing, but it's coming from the West. It's coming from the W. That children must exclusively breastfeed. Otherwise, it's the same understanding. Women want to breastfeed because they understand it as in a lot of the cultures it's preferred. But they found exclusively breastfeeding for 6 months because of developmental and psychological reasons and lifestyles and ways of life is a WHO intervention. And so I was asking if this is a thing that has always been a cultural practice, that you must exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, or if it's part of adopting the WHO, the World Health Organization guidelines.
No. I know that some Yoruba do feed their children solid or purees as convenient for them. So some of them be 2 months, for some 6 months and above. So the 6 months you mentioned is one of them.
Okay, now if you could remember when I was actually saying it, I was like the pregnant woman actually advised, like I said, pregnant woman, the mothers are advised, are encouraged
By whom?
okay, by WHO, not the cultural aspect. All right. Thank you.
We have one question.
Thank you.
Everyone who has an observation, put up your hand to give someone else. We are taking one question.
Before you go around, can I ask them my question?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so as a follow-up question, you talk about childcare, infant childcare being the responsibility of the community, despite being the mother's responsibility. So what happened? One house, please. So what happens in cases of maternal mortality? So does the child become the property of the community or the family? And then even at that, one person has to be solely responsible for the child's care. And then if one person or whoever is responsible for the child care, who is in charge of the ikomo, that's the child naming ceremony, who carries the child, and then who goes, let's say the extra mile or extra effort to consult the oracles or the supernatural beings about the future of such a child.
Okay. Now, with regards to your question.
No, wait. Take everything together.
So taking one question, about 3 comments, and please. So, yes. So we're going to take a question.
It's actually a suggestion for the presenter with the title "Let Us Play." I'm just going to ask if you've considered an adaptation, because from what you have said, I think it's going to be more compelling and more beneficial if there's an adaptation so that people can hear the voices of all these things that you have said. For a child to say, a child is like modeling or reliving the things that they see parents do or the things that happen around them. I think if there's an adaptation, it will be more compelling and the understanding will be sharper and it will stay more with people, both for the children and for adults. Thank you.
So we're taking comments in an order.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rashid Adebayo. Now, I want to specifically have an observation concerning the people of Hajia, and I want you to please listen. Now, I think there is a lot of fusion of modernity to the paper. Let me take it from what the controversial. I observe it when you said it that Yoruba mothers exclusively breastfeed for 6 months and then 2 years with other things. In the Yoruba settings, they don't have that exclusivity of 6 months. What they have is depending on the child. In fact, some children, when they reach 3 months, they will tell you the breastfeeding is not enough. So they will not be using Akamu, which they call Ogi or whatever. So it depends on the, or every other thing. It depends on the child. So there is not any way. It is the WHO or the modernity that brought the 6 months. That was one. The second thing is, even concerning the children feedings, Yoruba has their own way of trying to give what they call the natural environment food to their child. So based on the way they want that child to grow. It is because of the modernity we keep on forgetting all those kind of things. There is even sometimes there is a timetable of the kind of food they give to child at every stage of their life till they reach around 5 years or so. But all this thing has been somehow watershed. Now I want to make the second comment on what she asked, the question of what we call adoption. In the Yoruba, there is nothing like adoption, but it has been exist with us. In fact, without the only thing is there is no legality of being adopted. If you choose to give your child to somebody to take care of that particular, it becomes part of the family. But I've seen a situation whereby they will say, if somebody wants to go for marriage or wants to do marriage, they will say, okay, which means the person that raised that child, even when the mother is alive. So that's the issue of adoption has been part and parcel of the Yoruba, but we don't legally make it. So whoever that nurture a child becomes the original, becomes the mother, and that's the Yoruba. Thank you.
Thank you.
A follow-up to what he just said. This whole idea of when should breastfeeding stop or start was never part of our culture from the very, let's even go pre-slavery time. We didn't have baby food. So there was even no debate about when should we stop breastfeeding. Do you understand? So it's been our culture, whether anybody is talking about WHO, Yoruba, I'm not Yoruba, right? I was telling them, and I said, my mom had me when she was in school. My grandma was working. In fact, my great-grandma fed me. When someone said, was she lactating? I do not know, but I did know that she fed me and she fed my younger ones. So whether they are saying pre-colonial history or in recent times, in African culture, baby food was not really, branded baby food was not part of us. So we should take our discussion of raising kids and the rest of it outside the context of colonialism so that we can have a better understanding of the African culture. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a comment. Oh, no, not at all. Oh, comments.
Discipline children in school. It's not just about private schools or what the government. I'm aware of the fact that in Lagos State currently, you are not allowed to administer corporal punishment to any child. But where I teach, I think we should go back to communicating with children outside maybe the Western education. If I look at a child and the child is not responding, others around will caution the child. And I think this thing of parents come to make noise. Once the school authority, we don't need the state or local government. Once the particular school authority makes it clear that if you don't want your child disciplined, don't bring the child here. They will just take it in. I teach in a highbrow school, and there was a time we had WAEC exam, and the children were a little naughty. They didn't come to all on time. They had their backs plugged before they could enter the hall. When parents start making noise that they in exam situation, it was a case of, do you want to bring your child early or you want your child plugged before the child? And we have a reputation to protect and we don't want any child tarnishing it. So I think we need to go back to being firm. We really need it. It's crazy out there.
Chair, first of all, I understand that there was a question directed to the panelists online that has not been answered. Then we also have a question here. No, someone spoke. Please, if you ask the question to the panelists online and it hasn't been answered, can we know?
It was reaction. It was reaction.
Oh, okay. That's clear. So we have one question to answer and so their comments, but this is the second question.
Can I?
And the session ends in 15 minutes.
Oh, we have to.
Okay.
So thank you for the second opportunity. Thank you very much. Please, I would like to ask environment. What happened after providing the good environment to a child or for a child? Then a child grew up and picked, let me say, rascal behavior. You have tried all your own best. Whom should we blame? The parents or the society or who? We have created every environment, everything, money-wise or at character development and everything. Then this child to grow up, maybe after maybe going to school and pick up some funny characters that you know that so it's not ethical. So who do we blame at this point? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm so sorry, ma'am. We have 15 minutes and we have 2 questions to answer. Do we answer and then take comments? Are you reacting or asking a question? Sorry? You want to ask a question?
Thank you so much. This goes to Sianda. From my observation, and I want to believe that you will agree with me that in South Africa, we have issue of colonial mentality in education, going with you with the difficulty of child, raising or education of child. I learned that, or I know that some Africans do prefer to send their children to white school, in quotes, because of quality education, in quotes. And this day that we are fighting or trying to decolonize education in South Africa, what would you say, or what would you prefer to be a solution to this case in reducing the number or the number of children enrollment, especially the Africans, being pushed to study in white schools or Indian schools?
Thank you. Okay, Chair, we can now answer 3 questions before we take reaction.
Thank you. I think, okay, I got a comment. Yes, to kind of cite authorities, right? And I appreciate that. I think that for time constraints, I couldn't mention some, but then we have authorities such as Hall and Claire that have done so much work on social interactions, right? And I'll react to just response, not necessarily reaction, right? So what you have mentioned about corporate punishment. And I think that in trying to decolonize, sometimes we are carried away by trying to bring back the local color, and we forget to also kind of discard the local practices that were disadvantageous to child raising. So if you want to go by that local punishment, like you would say, I know you will not agree because we may not belong to the same generation, right? But if you want to do a thorough research on the outcome of such punishments on those children, you will see that, even where in occasions where it kind of made them, it also marred them. You see timidity, you see some kind of form of disorientation, right, as a result of such kind of disciplinary measures. All right, so I feel like there should be a balance in kind of creating disciplinary measures for children. There's something called, we should pay special attention to age specificity, right, in dishing out punishment on children. For example, there are children, you look at the child and look at the kind of punishment you want to. And I really do not like to use the word punishment because it has a kind of negative connotation to it. You'd rather say just discipline, right? So we'll leave that to that. Thank you. And then back again to a child, having some form of habits that may not be copied from the house. In our local environment, I know that some parents, if we want to bring it home, may want to take that as a situation for spiritual consultations. You hear some say, you possibly take the children to church. This child is possibly demonized. This child needs deliverance. However, I think that from in-depth observation, we know that a child's reactions, right, is as a result of the environment. The environment is exposed to. The environment is exposed to. There are facts to actually back this up. So if you go beyond searching genes, right, I don't want to go into that kind of medical field to say the line parental influences of the family lineage or gene on the child, look environment. Time didn't permit me to go details into the expressions of the child because I took the case for that to narrate the outcome, and we kind of deliberated on it to the parents of that child. The outcome was that the parent changed the environment. It was fun, right? But in looking at for a child to jump from the bed and down and he's saying, Ojuoye, hailing as a bus conductor, local bus conductor within the environment. If you, for example, as a parent, that's why intentionality is key in parenting, right? And so that parent actually changed the environment of the child, because from behaving like a bus conductor today, the child can behave as another tomorrow or as a teacher. So there are a lot of numerous factors attached to that. So I'll actually take it that, it's social influences of the child, not necessarily. It's nothing outside the box. It's all connected. Thank you.
So what happens to introverted children?
Yeah, for introverted children, I disclosed that right before I began that this child in question was extroverted, very active child, right? And that is why it's case specific, right? For introverted children, you may want to ask, why is the child introverted? That also goes back to the mode of parenting.
What is his nature? And not just.
Well, if you want to, yes, you have the nature nurture dichotomy in raising the child, and that is actually you. If you want to do nature nurture, you may want to look at biological influences, non-biological influences. So that's why it's going to be case specific. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So Janaya can answer the question. Okay. She hasn't answered.
So with regards to the question, it's more likely the grandmother. So she can actually take up the duty of breastfeeding the child if there is a case of mother mortality. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next.
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, I mean, one of the biggest things that kept coming up with my participants, especially when we were like in a room setting with all of us and the husbands were involved, there was usually an uproar of let's build our own school. But at the same time, there's also others who are like, let's just homeschool our children. But then if you perhaps followed the Roads Must Fall movement and the Fees Must Fall movement, the other big thing is that these places, these schools are in our country, in our continent, and they should be able to teach our African children in a way that affirms them and in a way that recognizes them and sees them as equal citizens of this country. And we shouldn't need to build our own school or homeschool our children in our own country when there are schools that insist on continuing with colonial ways of teaching. And so we should continue challenging it. And that's why you would have seen that in South Africa, after the big university protests, there started being protests in high schools as well, with high school children protesting that their hair was not being allowed, protesting that they were not allowed to speak African languages on the school premises. So the solution is to continue challenging, because I think it shouldn't be that on an African in an African country, we are reduced to homeschooling our children or building our own schools. And the schools are there in our own country, and they should teach our children properly. So I think that's the solution, to continue challenging, not just in universities, but also in high schools and primary schools, to change the curriculum and decolonize the curriculum even at that level.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Diana. And I think we still have 5 minutes.
I don't know if I don't get any question or addition or observation. I mean, if you're like learning out, you can always have discussion happen. But since you have 5 minutes, if there's any question, you can take it. Oh, let's see in the chat. There's no question in the chat.
Okay, I was trying to take my question outside. So my question goes to Amen. No, okay, the child in your case study is obviously the child of parents that are financially comfortable, because you mentioned that the child has a toy box. So children from indigent homes do not have toy box. So what kind of play do they play? What do they play with? And then what do they say? Like you mentioned one of the, you mentioned the child said something about one of the is it Spidey character or something, or you understand? So yes, spaghetti muscle. So a child that doesn't watch Disney Junior or any of those cartoon channels will not say that. So what kind of play will such a child play? And what would the child say when he or she plays?
Well, what the child will say, what they play, right, will depend on observation of that child, right? That would depend on, for example, I can't speak for. However, about the toy box thingy, every child has a toy. Every child has a toy. It depends on what you want to define the toy to be. Do you understand? If it isn't the lid of a bottle, someone can pick up that bottle now and make the lid become the toy. Or a child can pack sand in the bottle or sachet, empty sachet, and becomes a toy. A child who plays with sand and makes like a molehill out of it, it becomes a toy. Right. So I think it goes back to specificity, right? And then in play, there are different variations to it, right? But this was descriptive play in this context, right? So that's how I can see it. But I think that there's room for. However, I was at a crossroad drafting the conclusion for this. I told, while we were discussing before the presentation, I told the friends, this is inconclusive. That is to say that there's so much work to be done in this regard. This is just a microcosm of what is out there. So there's opportunity for others to research and draw more conclusions from it. Thank you.
Having question, comment. Yes, so when you began the session, what I thought would be the focus of your presentation would be how, say, modern content has removed tradition. Proverbs you mentioned, the folklores you mentioned from the play of children, but then also in the observation of the child, you get them, say, quoting lines from their cartoons and mimicking people around them. But that has been repeated and you never went back to that.
Right. So I actually discussed this before this presentation also. So I said we're to go to modern context, we may want to look at the influence of televisions or the programs on televisions and how to bring back this local color by possibly promoting, what we had then, something like Tales by Moonlight, all those other kind of plays, bringing it back, so much so that where a child will have to be influenced by the Spider-Man story, for example, they go back to such stories or tales that bring back the local color. That would be a recommendation, right? And it's really good. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. I think at this point we can close the panel. Yes. But I also like to say that the part 3 of this panel will be shortly after lunch at 11. Yeah, you're all welcome to us. Thank you. So thank you very much, Brianda. It's nice having you on the panel. Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely finding. Yes. Bye.
Yes, please. Bye.
Bye. I don't know.